There we go. Okay, so something I did want to just share at the beginning, because we are using it for this meeting, but it's something that will be really helpful if you are planning any virtual events with your organization. Sun Devil Sync does have a feature that allows you to have a link like I used for you guys to do attendance. So all you would have to do is go to the event that you are hosting in Sun Devil Sync, and you click on Manage Event. And then there is the link right here. It's a really long link, so I usually throw it into tiny URL just to make it shorter. And then you can just share it in the chat if you're having a virtual event. And that way you can get the list of everybody who goes. So you'll see right here, we see that 15 people have clicked the link, and then you can track attendance and you get all of their email addresses. So that's just a fun little tip to start out with if you are doing any virtual events or meetings and want to make sure that you can get that roster of people that have attended that. So just to start off, so this is going to be about event planning in the COVID environment. So we all know that a lot of things have had to change due to COVID-19 and wanting to maintain safety for everybody on campus. So we're going to be talking about what that will look like in the upcoming semester. So this is offered by our Office of Student Organizations at Leadership. So that's us on the Tempe campus. And then like we mentioned before, we do have some of our friends at other campuses that can also answer any questions. And we will have plenty of time to ask any questions at the end. So if you do have anything, feel free to save it for the end, or you can put it in the chat, and we'll also be trying to help monitor that over time. Y'all can still see my screen, right? Can somebody just... The little thing went away, but I think it's still good, right? Okay, nobody's complaining. So, okay, thank you. So for all the updated information, you can click on this link and I'll send out this presentation. But this has everything that is most up to date. We know that things are changing often, so it's always helpful to know where the most recent information is about coronavirus on campus. So the information that we're going to provide is meant to serve as guidance to help students and the organizations engage at ASU. So really thinking about this as guidelines and like best practices, and that we definitely also want to offer ourselves as resources. So if you are planning events and you aren't sure if you're following the correct policies or anything like that, you should definitely reach out to us or the student org office on your campus if you're from another campus or hosting an event at another campus, to make sure that we are providing you with the best resources for that. So today we'll be talking about some virtual event resources, some ASU event and meeting guidelines, how to host in-person events, on-campus events and meetings, outdoor events and tabling, health and safety protocols for in-person events, and events or meetings that have over 50 participants. So for virtual event resources, so I already shared that attendance sharing, which is really awesome if you are doing any attendance events online. So just some guidelines for student org of virtual events. So we really encourage you to have in-person or virtual modes of participation, whether or not your event is in person or not in person, just because we know all students may not be in the area. They might be taking classes from their hometown. They might be not really feeling comfortable coming to campus because of the virus. So just being aware that anytime that you can offer a virtual mode, definitely make sure that you are doing that. And most of the rooms that we have do have equipment to do virtual Zoom calls as well. So that's really important. And then virtual, so it's also a really good backup option. Yeah. So if you have more than 50 people coming, or if you are having a large number of people, if you are having non-ASU affiliated people come where they're not able to come on campus for the event, it's another good option to have a virtual aspect of your organization or of your event so that they can participate. And then just being aware that all faculty, staff, and students have a Zoom Pro account. So we get this question every so often where students say, oh, there's a limit on how long you can have a Zoom call, but if they're logged in with their ASU right through the ASU Zoom, you can actually use your the Pro account, so you would have the access to longer calls. So that's something that's really important to know, and you can just go to asu.zoom.us to sign in and just using your ASU right.
All right, so now we're going to dive into a little bit of the in-person on-campus events. And before I dive into that, I want to preface that when and where possible, go virtual. We still want to make sure we're practicing physical distance guidelines and to make sure that students and faculty and staff are comfortable. And so when and where possible, go virtual. So if you want to head to the next slide there. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so Megan touched on some of these just briefly. I'm gonna dive into them a little bit more. But like she said, the new guideline for max in-person capacity is 50 people. We, always go less if you can, but no more than 50. And when it comes to reserving the space that you're gonna be utilizing, the sooner the better for requesting the reservations. We want it to be at least 30 days in advance. And it's always first come, first served basis. Your first choice may not always be what you get. So your first choice is not necessarily guaranteed. And this next part is going to be talked about a little more in detail later on in this presentation. But utilizing Sun Devil Sync, we're really pushing hard for student organizations to utilize Sun Devil Sync a lot more in their official capacities. And that goes for maintain their rosters, their attendees, and just making sure that we're keeping track of our events, of your student organizations events. And obviously, like I said there, the purpose of event roster maintenance is to be timely in our response to environmental management requests. So just making sure that we can know who's attending our events and what attendance that our students are attending. And those 3 bullet points there, like I said, we're gonna go a lot more in detail with that. But being able to create an event in Sun Devil Sync, how to download the CheckIn app, and how to download a personal event pass or a QR code. These are features that are extremely useful when it comes to being able to know who's coming to your event and making it a lot simpler and easier for your students or for the students that will be attending the events to gain access to them. All right, so outdoor guidelines. There will be made available tabling spaces and maps. So keep an eye out for those as they come out. The tables and chairs, so the actual equipment that's going to be at those tables and chairs will be wiped down and sanitized both before and after check-in. Making sure that your organization's officers or members that will be staffing it is going to be no more than 2 at a time. And they should be able to practice physical distancing measures during those times. So if you have a 6-foot table, obviously making sure that they're on either end of the table to maintain that 6-foot distance. An 8-foot table makes that a little bit easier, so they still have some table to work with while they're there. Obviously making sure they're wearing their face coverings and making sure that the individuals that will be coming to those tables also maintain 6 feet from the table and also wearing face coverings. I realize it can be hard when someone walks to the table. It's human nature to just walk right up to the table and stand right there. But to make sure that those that are staffing the table ask those students or those staff to stand 6 feet back. Jeff, Becky, is there anything that you would like to add in regards to indoor and outdoor event space and reservations?
I just mentioned that you're also welcome to bring your own tables for your identified spaces, and that we've done a little bit of adjusting to spacing out some of the spaces so that we can maintain some physical distancing. So just check with us with Event and Meeting Services, and we can walk you through what those areas are and where you can reserve space.
I'll also throw in that here on the Tempe campus, and this may be different on different campuses, but we are limiting the reservations because we have fewer spots to groups can reserve up to 2 dates per week and up to 4 dates per reservation. Then once your reservation has completely passed of those 4 dates, you can submit another request for, again, up to 2 dates per week, up to 4 dates per reservation. So if you were used to it before, it was up to 10 dates at a time. It is now 4 dates at a time and only 2 per week.
And just to jump off that one more time too, is that as mentioned by Megan and others, is that these guidelines can change at any time, and that gives us a little bit of ability to adjust and adapt as needed as well. That's kind of what the limitations are meant for safety, security, and also the ability if something changes, whether it be to be more restrictive or to open it up a little bit more, we have that ability to do so.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, everyone, let's talk about health and safety protocols for in-person events and meetings. So face coverings are required during the event for in-person events, that is at all times for those who participate in person. And physical distancing, which is currently a minimum of 6 feet, must be observed at all times at all indoor and outdoor events and activities. At that same time, you should also give some special attention to the entrance and exit of the venue of your event, and just make sure, like, if you are going to be having any tables at your event where lines could be forming, that you have kept physical distancing guidelines at the forefront of your mind when you're planning that kind of stuff too. And then also, while venue and custodial staff are regularly cleaning events and meeting spaces, as well as just public areas in general, it's encouraged that you as event organizers provide your own hand sanitizer and wipes throughout the event. Event organizers should have some kind of a plan in place to clean items touched by multiple people during the event. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind. But some of those examples might include podiums, microphones, tables, that kind of stuff. Also, and this one's pretty obvious, stay home if you're sick. Event hosts and guests should not attend any in-person events if they're feeling sick or showing any sign of COVID-related symptoms. So you can monitor this by completing the daily health check on the ASU mobile app or on your My ASU. And then if you don't or want to like maybe just reassess yourself a little bit more personally, the CDC does have some guidelines that you can ask yourself questions to check and make sure that you're okay too. But a lot of those questions are just, do you feel sick? If you feel sick, stay home. If you have a fever of over 100 degrees, stay home. And if you've been in contact with anyone that could have been exposed to COVID-19, stay home there too. But that also being said, like, take care of yourself. If you are answering yes to any of those questions, contact your healthcare provider or reach out to ASU Health Services and someone will try to help you during this time. Also, prior to your event, remind attendees of the guidelines that are applicable to the event. So just make sure that you remind them about face coverings and the physical distancing guidelines, the availability of virtual participation options for those who desire them. So I know Sean mentioned at the beginning that we are strongly encouraging virtual options where possible, but we're also encouraging you to have some kind of a virtual option for all of your in-person events too, just so it's inclusive to everyone who might not be comfortable attending in person. And then also just sending a reminder that attendees who do not feel well should stay home. On, I believe it is the second slide, there is a link to the regularly updated coronavirus page for ASU. Check that out every once in a while, just making sure that everything's updated. Well, making sure updates are made, that you are understanding those updates. Just make sure you check that regularly. Either the primary or secondary advisor for a student organization must be present at all in-person events and is responsible, along with the event organizer, for being knowledgeable regarding the plan for the event and ensuring that the event adheres to these and other applicable guidelines. So the advisor may also serve as the event organizer, but that's up to the student organization. I would strongly encourage, and I think my coworkers would agree, to have the students be the event organizers. Since this is their group, we want them to have as much ownership over their events as possible. Then Sean also mentioned we're going to talk about Sun Devil Sync a lot, and I'll be showing you some slides that'll explain a few of these things. But student organizations must use the Sun Devil Sync CheckIn app to maintain a roster of attendees, and students who are attending events must use the Sun Devil Sync event pass for their requirement. So we'll talk about that again in further detail. And then if any attendees for your events become aware that they've been exposed to COVID-19, email the Dean of Students office, and that email can be found right there. But try to do that as soon as possible. Next slide. Awesome, thank you. All right, let's talk about face coverings for a hot minute. So face coverings are required during the event at all times, and everyone that is attending the event is required to wear a face covering over their nose and mouth while in ASU buildings and outdoor spaces. I'm sure you've all heard this, but you breathe through your nose too, so it's important to keep that covered. Yes, thank you, Megan, for demonstrating. Individuals may purchase or make their own face coverings so long as they are equivalent or of greater efficiency to cloth face coverings and you cover your mouth and nose. So it's okay to make your own face mask, just make sure that it has more than one layer of cloth. That's usually what the CDC recommends. And then just something to keep in mind, those single layer neck fleece covers, also known as gaiters, I did not know that until making this presentation, but those do not count or do not satisfy the requirement. So if you are not able to find a face mask that satisfies these requirements, you can go to some of the info desks in our ASU buildings and they should have some left over for you there. I know that the MU info desk on the first floor does have some, but that's for emergencies only. So you should bring your own face coverings to all events. All right. Thanks, Megan. All right. Taking attendance at your event or meeting, and you'll use the roster tool on Sun Devil Sync, and you can also find your event pass on Sun Devil Sync. Student organizations, like I'd already said, must use Sun Devil Sync to maintain a roster of attendees, and student attendees must use the Sun Devil Sync event pass for their roster requirement. And the purpose of roster maintenance during in-person events is to be timely in our response to environmental management requests. And that's why it's important that if an attendee to an event has been exposed to COVID-19 or thinks that they might have been, that you let the Dean of Students office know immediately. And that's why we are tracking all of this on Sun Devil Sync. All right. Creating an event in Sun Devil Sync. Right now, if you are listed as a top officer, so Officer 1, Officer 2, or Officer 3, the advisor, or have been granted access to events in Sun Devil Sync, you have the ability to create an event on behalf of your organization. So if you are one of those people that can create events, you'll go to your organization's Action Center, which on the screen right now, you can currently see USG Tempe's Action Center, and then select the hamburger menu in the top left corner. I know I always say hamburger menu and people get confused. It's the three horizontal lines in the top left corner. Megan's cursor is over it right now. And then once you are in the events tool, where her cursor is right now as well, you will select plus create event to start the event submission process. So once you're in the event section, you'll see a big blue button that says create event, and that's where you go to submit that. All right. And then you can track attendance with the event check-in app. So this is pretty new. If you're a student that's been around for a while, you might be familiar with the card swipers that we allow student organizations to take from our office. There is now no need for card swipers. We have the event check-in app that you can all put on your own personal devices, which is amazing. So whenever you create your event in Sun Devil Sync, on this graphic that we have the new student organization info session. This is what you'll see, that part of the screen that we have on there is what you'll see whenever you're in the explore view of the event. So to get to the attendance URL and the access code, you need to click that Manage Event button in the top right corner. And then you'll scroll down and you'll find an access code for your event. So this is also where you'll find that attendance URL that Megan mentioned earlier. So if you maybe are hosting virtual events, that's where you'll find the attendance URL, and you can put that in the chat and collect attendance that way. But for in-person events, it's just easier to use this event check-in app. So once you have the access code, you will also need to have the Campus Labs event check-in app downloaded, and you can find that in the Apple Store or just in your App Store in general if you're using Samsungs or other device or other smartphones and Androids. So you should be able to find that on all phones. And then once you click into the event check-in app, it'll just have your event code. It'll ask you for your event code right on the front screen. You just copy paste that in there and then you start session, and that's where you start scanning people's event passes. So it's really easy from the event organizer side of things. So we'll just need to make sure that the attendees are getting their event pass out and ready to go. So Megan, if you click to the next screen, if you have RSVP or not RSVP'd, well, done both, RSVP'd and marked your attendance to this workshop today, you'll receive a copy of this presentation, which will include this graphic inside of it, and you can print this out and put this like in front of the entrance at some of your events just to help explain to student attendees how to download their event pass so then they can mark their attendance to your events. But to do this, you will, or to help attendees access their event pass, you will sign into Sun Devil Sync using your ASU Right. You'll select your account, which can be found in the top right corner. This one you can see on the screen includes Megan's profile picture, but it might also have your initials in that top right corner. Just look for a big circle in the top right corner, and that's where you'll get to your account. Whenever that opens up, select the event pass, and then whenever you're there, you can save the event pass to your Apple Wallet or screenshot it to save for future use. So it's pretty easy to get that to direct people there. It's just a matter of making sure that you're logged in with your ASU Right on your smartphone, which is sometimes complicated, but this is the world we live in nowadays, people. We got to use technology to our advantage. But
and just to also say, the event pass is not specific to like a single event. It's more like a mobile ID basically. So a student would just need to download their event pass one time, and then they use that for any event that they attend that is using Sun Devil Sync to record attendance.
Yep. Thanks for adding that, Megan. That's good to remember. Cool. And then events or meetings for 50+ participants. And we're just going to talk about this very briefly. So events or meetings with 50+ participants are discouraged and require pre-approval no later than 30 days prior to the event. So if you are hoping to host an event with 50+ people, you'll need to reach out to the Senior Vice President of Educational Outreach and Student Services 30 days prior to the event to get approval. So that's anyone who's on this call that would want to be planning a larger event. You will need to be reaching out if you want to do that. But again, we're strongly encouraging virtual options or very small in-person events.
So that's the end of our like formal slides, but we do have plenty of time, like I said, for questions if people have questions. And then this is also the contact information for each campus, so that you can reach out to the correct people. Yeah, so for our team, it's simpyclubs@asu.edu. But do people have any questions? And feel free to put them in the chat, or if you would like to unmute, you can do that, whatever's easiest.
Is there a list on the number allowed, like for different spaces?
Every venue has, I'm assuming you're talking about capacities?
Right.
Yep. So every venue has worked to create physical distanced capacities, as well as diagrams showing what the different setup capabilities are. So based on the venue that you're working with, they will be able to provide that information. For the Memorial Union, for example, we have done diagrams and have capacities listed for each space in our facility. And you just have to reach out and let us know. We can certainly share that with anyone who requests it. Most spaces, our large spaces that we would normally fit 400, obviously because we're limited to 50, will be reduced significantly to allow for physical distancing. But we will be posting that in a website update in the near future. I can put the if you have a specific question for a specific space, just let me know, or our team know at Event and Meeting Services here on the Tempe campus, or any of the student unions and centers. They should be able to provide the information for you based on your needs.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Quick question. Do any of the guidelines change for off-campus in-person events at all?
The expectation is that all of the guidelines in place for on-campus events are also followed for off-campus events for student organizations. And the link that has all of that information, I will post it again in the chat right here. Feel free to explore that. But yes, off-campus events are expected to follow the same guidelines as on-campus events.
Go ahead. I saw there was a question about if you had to use the student Zoom room or advisor Zoom room. It doesn't matter for virtual events whose Zoom room you're using. I mean, I would advise using somebody's account associated with their ASU account, or else they might have the limitations of how long the meeting can go, but we don't have any policies around that. So whatever is easiest.
So I may have missed this, but what constitutes an event? What's the quantity of people? And I'm asking specifically because we are a build, hands-on building organization, so Formula SAE. So we physically build a car inside of a designated space that we have. Do we have to create an event to be able to have our build days or our shop days on site?
For that, do you intend on having people outside of the club attend the event?
Not now, because we were already told by the shop manager that we can only have 3 people from the student organization at a time. Where typically we'd have 50 to 100 students on a Saturday. Believe it or not,
Okay.
that's not going to happen. But we typically have sponsors or alumni, stuff like that, come by Saturdays. Obviously, that wouldn't happen now. But yeah, typically all we're allowed now is 3 people at a time in the shop. And my secondary question is, I noticed that you said that advisors had to be on site for all meetings. Would that apply in this case? I've always got the tough questions if you don't know.
Yeah, that's
So Chris, this is correct me if I'm wrong, a partnership through, you said, which department?
This is Fulton Student Org's Society of Automotive Engineers.
Right, so it's through engineering. And so you have a controlled environment that is done through a facility that's managed by engineering as well?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think based on, and Brandon, you can jump in on this too, I think, based on what you provided, you know, this would be a situational thing where as a partnership with a college, whereas in the guidelines, for example, there's a listing of series of recitals in the Herberger Institute of Design Arts, where if this is a normal part of your paraprofessional group that is done and it's related to an academic department, if you're able to, if this is something you do on a regular basis and it's managed in a way within the facility that is done in a safe means that has some oversight, the advisor would need to be aware of what's happening. I think in that situation, you are creating a good environment. Now, this is where we kind of get into the idea of what's an event and what isn't. I think it's, again, for the larger group, it's a case-by-case basis. I think that the safe bet would be to just register it. It doesn't hurt to just register it. And it's best practice so that you can know when things are happening and who's there. But if you've already got a system in place that if this is normal time that you're using to build the car and you're already tracking that, I think that there's some other things you can put in place that would help meet the guidelines.
Yes, in the past we wouldn't have to track this, right? You know, I mean, we're usually any given time at any given, you know, part of the day and any part of the week, weekends included, holidays, right? So they never stop all through the summer, the whole bit.
Right.
So typically we wouldn't, but we're trying to learn how to, you know, do a little more organization, a little more project management to make sure that, you know, we have, you know, to build a car, you have many different sub teams and many different leaders on each sub team, including business management, marketing, wiring to aerodynamics to frame building. We do a little bit of everything. So, it's a lot of students. We typically have, I would say 50 active, probably 100 students on any given time, included in the club. So we're really trying to figure out how we first off build a car with all these restrictions and get it done in time. And just how we kind of manage working around each other. So I would say this would become almost like a daily activity with at least one of the sub teams. So
Chris, I agree with everything that Jeff said earlier. I would add that I think trying to stick as closely as possible to the expectations of student organization events for this would be beneficial for the organization. And so what I mean by that is I would not have more than 50 people at any time in the same space for this program. I also would recommend being a little bit more controlled of who is there than we would in a non-COVID environment. So what I mean by that is if you say that they're coming through kind of all day, maybe designating some times, but I would recommend setting up events in Sun Devil Sync as well, because then you could easily track who was there on any given day. And if we need to do any environmental management and ASU Health Services needs to get involved, we'll be able to, instead of reaching out to this large group, we'll be able to narrow down who was in a shared space. I would also recommend maybe, Jeff, if you would agree, one special event registry submitted just so we have on file that this is happening. Yep. And Tessie, Megan, or Sean, or Frank, if anyone can add to, you can make recurring events in Sun Devil Sync, right?
Okay.
So you can make this a recurring event and just have them sign in for the different days on there, and then you're good to go. It's so simple, the contact list, just scanning them in. So I would recommend doing that to stick as close to this as possible.
Yeah, we've already kind of got to, coordinate this with the coordinator that kind of runs the space. So it's just a simple add-on to say this is, we're trying to do a month in advance. Be very difficult. Things will get canceled, what have you. Things will go wrong. It just happens, right? So yeah, I think it's just a simple add-on just to do that if that's what you guys want us to do. So.
And the Sun Devil Sync app is so easy. I mean, it's a really quick and easy way to track. And that way you can actually at any time know who was there at that time. It's no different than the fitness complexes being open. They track anyone that comes into their space throughout the entire day. Similarly, I think that it's what would help meet the guidelines.
And one of the nice things about Sun Devil Sync is when you create your event, you can set it up so it can only be seen and registered by members of the club, and so it's not just broadcast out to everybody, which is nice. So you can kind of control who signs up via that way. And even also who you're inviting to sign up for those specific events. So if you can only have 3 people, you can send, these 3 people can send an invite to, and they can come and join it so that no one else can. So there's a lot of ways to control who is actually coming. So it's a better way to track who's actually there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we can also work with you more. So Sean is actually the direct contact for academic clubs. So you can reach out to us at Tempe clubs or reach out to Sean. I'll CC all of us on the email so you can see all of our email addresses. So definitely get in touch with us if you need help with that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to work with you on creating those events if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, this helps. So I'm project manager for the Chandler Innovation Centers, the old tech shop. So we're trying to open that back up. So it's another makerspace on campus. So this kind of gives me some insight on what others are doing as well as we try to figure out operations over there. So thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions people have?
I just wanted to add for downtown specifically, we're really very limited on the 50 people event venues. So one place that you could make room reservations, I put it in the chat, is the SDFC. You could definitely use a basketball court in there and then other gym facilities. And then for the student center, our biggest venue is San Carlos. And San Carlos, with the closed door, it's only 12 people. And with open door, it's about 24 to 25 people. So just if you are going to do a bigger event, definitely reserve them in advance. Downtown, it's very limited. And also, we don't have access to the park this year, at least for this semester until spring. So you can't use the park to reserve events this upcoming semester. Hope you guys can have a mask on.
The reason why the SDFCs are limited is because they've spread out their equipment through several of their large venues and gyms, just so that people know if we visit one of the SDFCs, the equipment's been moved into several spaces to accommodate physical distancing. So there are still some available, but that is why some of them are not available.
Any other questions?
There was a question about the SDFC fields. You'll if you have less than 50 people, can you still make a reservation? You totally can. It's just we do have smaller spaces. If you're gonna have a meeting or an event with less than 30 people, we have venues for that in the student center. So I just recommend you use the student center. But obviously you're more than welcome to use the SDFC. But usually the SDFCs they're going to be reserved for bigger events if that's the case.
So there's a question about the Sun Sync on the ASU app. So I'm not sure about the error on the ASU app, but you wouldn't necessarily be using the ASU app. You need to use the CheckIn app if that's what you're looking to do, to check people in. And then as far as creating events, you would have to do that on Sun Sync. So I'll just go and do that really quick to show you what that looks like. So organization and click on the hamburger menu, whatever that's called, and then click events. This looks a little different because I have the admin view, but here it's the same. So you would create an event, and then right here you can add another date. So you can just add multiple dates and multiple times and stuff like that. It will create separate pages for each event. So you can create them all at one time, but you, if you have to change anything, you have to go in and change each one individually. So that's just something to remember. But yeah, so if you're all set and know all the dates of your events, you can do that, and then it will create a different page for each one. So to create the multiple one, you just would have to click add another date. So you can't make it like a reoccurring, like just every week or something like that. You have to add every date individually. So you just have to select the date and the time. But it does copy it automatically. So if you're doing the same date and time, you just have to change the date. So it might take a little bit longer, but it's a little different. But yeah, and then you use the CheckIn app to check people in. The ASU app, Sun Sync, I believe it just really shows like events and organizations. You can't actually like do any of the manage features for your organization on the ASU app. It's more of a like finding events and finding clubs and stuff like that. Any other questions? And just a reminder, if you can make sure that you fill out the link to make sure that you get recorded your attendance. If it doesn't seem to be working, you can just private message me your email address, and I'll make sure to send you the email follow-up that will include the presentation. And I'll also include some of the other links that we've been sharing in the chat, so y'all can make sure you have access to that.
Is there specific information we need to include in our description box for making events?
Not necessarily. Just make sure it's a description of what people can expect from the event. Otherwise, there's no real expectations of what you should put there.
As we're reviewing events on Sun Devil Sync to approve, whenever we get to in-person events, we do always comment on those events, like asking if they've been in contact with the venue to make sure that they understand in-person guidelines and stuff. So if you want to mention like precautions that you'll be taking in your event description, that might just help eliminate that step. But that said, like, no, there aren't really any requirements as you're submitting it though.
Okay, thanks.
And I want to add, there's a good amount of flexibility on who sees the events as well. And so while we're asking everybody to create events, number one, it could be great because if you're trying to publicize it, it'll show up on the events pages. But if you just want to make it a private event and only attendees that you invite come to it, you can do that setting as well. So it is flexible in that capacity. So make sure to check all of the options that makes the most sense for your event. You can also set capacities. So if you have a space that can hold 30, you can set the capacity of the RSVP to 30.
Yeah, and so when you're scanning people in through the app, if you want to have it so like only RSVP people can come or like can come first, so that like if you do RSVP because you have limited space, it will show up when you scan them if they RSVP'd or not. So like if you're saying like you're only going to let people who RSVP'd in until like 5 minutes after the event starts or something like that, you can just tell a person like, hey, you didn't RSVP and we're full. So there's a lot of workarounds you can do depending on what kind of event you're having. So definitely reach out to us and we'd be happy to help walk you through the options if you're having kind of a unique event with unique needs, I guess.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I actually have a quick question in regards to creating the events. So with the time and place, and when you create the start date and start time, and then you add additional dates, as for like the description, is it going to be applied the same with all of them, or can we change the description on those?
Would be applied the same. You can go in and like edit each of the individual events if you would like to. But that can be kind of time consuming. Usually what we do, so we host a lot of workshops and usually we make them all at one time for like a specific workshop. So if we're doing like the new org info session, we'll have 4 dates in the semester and I'll post them all at once. But it is hard because usually we want to put in the description, like if you can't attend this one, attend like our next one or something like that. So we usually just try to work our description to be as like common as possible for all the events, but you can go in and change them individually if you do want to. It might take a little bit longer, but it makes a different page for each one. You can edit the individual pages. Does that answer?
Yeah, that does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem, Celine.
I keep dropping the link to the student-specific event guidelines and how to host an event in the chat. Please make sure to visit that. If you're an advisor, send your student leader that information. If you're a student leader, send it to your advisor and your exec board. That really is the place that we will continuously update as guidelines change, and it's specific for student organizations. So you'll see a good amount of information from this presentation and some other information there as well. So please use that. And that, if it's easier, it's at asu.edu/clubs. You'll find it there as well.
And I'm going to send it in the follow-up email as well. Any other questions? Okay, someone asked in the chat, how do we deal with someone who is maybe not a part of the club and is not complying with ASU COVID guidelines? So I would say definitely working with the staff in the building that you're working with. I mean, it sounds like in this situation, like they're not being agreeable and aren't listening to you. So if that's the case, definitely finding the staff that works in that building to help with that. So like in that Memorial Union, we have a building manager, we have people at multiple desks in the building. So if it's in here, there's a lot of easy ways to get in contact with people. And then if you're in another building, like trying to make sure, I guess maybe making sure when you're going into it that you're aware of like where the staff is in the building so that you are, in case anything comes up, which I mean, I think should be kind of like a general thing to do in case there is an emergency, to kind of know who's in the building and who you might be able to contact if there's an emergency, if something's not working in the room, if the room's dirty or something like that. So just trying to get in touch with some staff. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts.
This is one of the reasons why we are requiring advisors to be present at in-person events. Typically, advisors are usually ASU staff or faculty members. They should be, unless they're a part of Cora. That's different. So hopefully a professional staff member will be able to mediate that situation. And if not, just follow what Megan said and work with the building. But advisors, hopefully, like, maybe we can talk about that as a student orgs team, like how can we give resources to advisors about how to handle these types of situations. But we also encourage students to try to feel comfortable addressing these types of things with their peers. But one of the best ways to do it is to just follow the COVID guidelines yourself and lead by example. And if you're not comfortable with saying things to someone, then use your advisor or staff on campus to reach out.
Okay, any last questions? We, like the student org staff, we can stay on the call if people have like really specific questions about their organization that they want to spend more time talking about, or we can set up a time to meet with you over Zoom. But if there are any other questions that you think would benefit the whole group, share them now or forever, hold your peace, or email us, please. Yeah, any last questions? Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming today. If you do, like I said, we'll stay on the call until everybody's gone. So feel free to like hang back. I don't know what word I was trying to say, but feel free to hang back and we'll answer your questions. But yeah, please email us if something comes up later. If you share information with your team and they have a million questions, feel free to reach out to us. We will also, like I said, share out this presentation. So you'll have access to the presentation. Plug for our event that we're having tonight. We're having a networking night as an opportunity for student org leaders to get connected with other student organization leaders and kind of hear what kind of virtual events might be working for them, what things are not working, how they can kind of collaborate for things in the future and stuff like that. So that's happening tonight at 6. I'll also put that in the email if you want to attend. Also, we just made an Instagram account for the Tempe Club, so follow that. I'll put that in the email too, but we're trying to definitely make sure that we have as many ways for clubs to get connected to each other and to us. So definitely reach out to us if you need anything, and we're really excited to have some more events happening and have our students engaged.